tale. We've got personal storytelling, we've got some poetry, we've got some plays. It's going to be a whole nice little mix of things. Every time somebody comes up, it'll serve you a new flavor. I'm so glad that you are here, because the most important part of storytelling is having somebody to tell the story to. So by you being here, you have officially participated in the storytelling process. And we're going to say this a lot throughout the day, but as you are listening, you will find the pieces of yourself that connect to the stories that you are hearing. And what I want you to remember is every single time you hear something that connects in you, remember that story that sparks up in your brain. And what I want you to do is meditate on those stories. And when you walk away from today, find your stories. This is inspiration, not purely consumption. So please find the pieces as you're listening today in yourself to take the inspiration away. Now, I wanted to open us up with kind of starting to think about stories as a whole. And every day we're kind of coming up here and thinking about a different kind of philosophy around stories. And for me, one of the things that I immediately started thinking of with stories was my grandfather figure passed away this past year. For the rest of the story, I will no longer call him my grandfather because he was my Jerry. He wasn't my grandpa, he was Jerry. So Jerry passed away this year, and you know, he was ready to go. He had lived a very long, full, adventurous life, and his body was giving up on him, and honestly, it was a gift when he passed. For him and for all of us, we knew he was ready to go. And my Jerry hated funerals. In his life, he despised them. He thought they were depressing and boring and stupid, and why would anyone want to have a memorial or celebration of someone dying? So when he passed away, my grandmother called us and she said, we're not having a funeral. We're not going to gather. Jerry didn't want it. And all of us were kind of like, okay, you know, if that's Jerry's wishes, let's do that. But then time passes and you're like, I'm still unsettled. I haven't had that thing that helps me move forward. And so we called my grandma back and we said, we need it. We need something. It's for us, actually. It's not for Jerry, it's for us. But let's do it in a way that Jerry would love it. So the way that we did it is we did not go to a burial. We did not go to a funeral that was on a depressing place. No, we went to his favorite restaurant and we ate Polish food and we sat in a circle and everyone told stories of Jerry. And it was the most healing, beautiful experience that I've had in my recent life. And I thought that I would share a little bit of what people shared about Jerry. Because Jerry is not my biological grandfather. Jerry is my adoptive grandfather. So he is my grandmother's husband after my original biological grandfather passed away. But I never knew him. I only knew Jerry. And Jerry lived a very adventurous life in his time. I grew up in Michigan, in Bay City. If you know the shape of Michigan, it's right, am I the right way? This way? Right there. It's over there. And so in Bay City, he used to ride the train. He used to work the trains, and he would ride from Bay City down to Miami every single year. He'd spend summers in Michigan, and he'd spend winters in Miami. And let me tell you, the stories from Miami were ones that no child should ever hear, and I started hearing them when I was 6. So I thought I'd share a few stories about Jerry. First of all, I want to share the lovely stories, because there were plenty of lovely stories. He was a gentleman through and through. And one of the stories that comes to my mind immediately when I think of Jerry is I think about when I was 5, 6, 7, around that age. He used to take me to the bar, which my parents were not happy about, but he would give me his classic fedoras, put it on my hat, it would sit down to hear about on my head, and we'd sit at the bar and I'd drink a Shirley Temple and eat a hot dog while he had his beers, plural, until we were finished for the day and all of his friends were wrapping up, and then they told him that we had to leave because I was too young to stay in the bar. So that was one of my first introductions with Jerry, is those special moments wearing his fedora, eating a hot dog, and drinking a Shirley Temple, which I was convinced had alcohol in it as a small child. I was like, I'm drunk. I was not drunk. Just drunk on life, I guess. Then there was the hilarious. Now Jerry, he was also a party animal. Like I said, he liked his beers, plural. And one time, when I was not 21 yet, my grandmother decided it was a good idea to allow us to throw a kegger in her basement. And my Jerry decided he was not going to let us just have a party downstairs without participating. Yes, he did help everyone do a keg stand, and he did get down on his knees and do a peppermint patty shot. Has anybody here ever heard of a peppermint patty shot? Probably not the one that we used to do. It was 100 proof schnapps, and you would have to open your mouth on your knees, pour schnapps into your mouth, and then also squeeze Hershey syrup. And then you had to shake your face around, and then you'd get a peppermint patty shot. Jerry did about 3 of them that night. I don't know how he survived. But he was always the party animal, always the enabler. When we came down to visit him in Florida, he's the one who bought us the beer. So definitely the enemy of my father in so many ways. And then there were the stories that he always told. So there was the story when I was a small child, and I am still terrified of wasps. I cannot get anywhere near them. I will scream in the opposite direction. If one comes up here, I will leap off the stage, so watch out there at the front. And one day I was at the pool where my grandfather lived, or where Jerry lived, and a wasp landed on my finger, and I screamed bloody murder, and he came sprinting around, and he is not an agile person. He is open age, and he is sprinting, and he slides up the grass, and he just goes straight into the pool, and then he pops out, and I'm just sitting there next to the ladder, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "A wasp landed on me." And he goes, "You little shit," and got out of the pool and walked away. I was known as the screamer in our family because of that moment. And then there was the wholly inappropriate. Now Jerry, like I said, he used to make trips down to Miami, and the number of stories that I heard about his encounters in Miami with all the women that he met was numerous, and it was every single time that I came home and he'd go, "Did I tell you about the time that I was in Miami?" And sometimes he had, often he hadn't, but it always sounded like the same story at the end of the day. But my favorite story is I came out as gay to my grandparents, and they were one of the few family members that had no pushback. I was accepted with open arms. The next trip that I came home, he goes, "Did I tell you about the time in Miami?" And I go, "You probably have, Jerry, but let's hear it." He goes, "Well, I was at this rockin' party, and it was all gentlemen, and I guess it was a party before we went out to the bars to find the ladies, and this guy kept bringing me drinks, and I said, I'm not gonna complain about free alcohol." And he goes, and then at the end of the night, he invites me over to the bar. You know what bar I'm talking about? And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about, Jerry. He goes, "The gay bar." And I go, "Oh, the guy was trying to pick you up." He goes, "Oh, he was trying to pick me up, all right." And I go, "Well, did you go with him?" And he goes, "I didn't, but you know what? If I had, he would have been the luckiest man on earth." He was very full of himself. Very confident in himself is the wording I should say. Now, I never told Jerry how much he meant to me in his life. He knew, I feel certain that he knew, because he was the grandfather figure for all of us growing up. And I wrote poems for a lot of my family members, but he's somebody I never wrote a poem for while he was alive. I think because I couldn't capture his spirit. It was so wild that I didn't really fully know how to condense it down into a poem. And that's one of my biggest regrets in life, I guess, is that I never found the words to share with him how much he meant to me when he could hear them directly. But I did write a poem for him when he passed away, and this is a poem that I read for him at his memorial / the Polish food potluck where we all told stories. It's called Off to the Races, and I think an important thing to know is he was a gambler, which probably is no surprise to the stories that I just shared, and he loved his horse races. So this is a poem about him. He's off to the races. Hoof to the dirt, steam in his engine, he places major bets on blonde beauties and wonders in white. With sparkle in his eye and whistle on his lips, he dances his way to the starting gate. Go, baby, go! I'm all in on this final race. His blue eyes hold the hue of midday sky. He winks at passing angels and saints, saying, I don't think we've met. Let me get that gate. Oh, he's a gentleman, even in heaven. In his final lap, did he retrace his steps, each colorful memory vibrant as the last, Bay City to Miami, good, bad, and lovely? Did I savor enough stories when he caught me in the kitchen? Did I tell you about the time? Sometimes he had. Many times he hadn't. I imagine the tales we'll hear when our race is through. We'll be greeted with Budweiser in hand and a familiar, hey baby, ready to relive both life and afterlife. Now, I think it's more important for all of us now, in this moment. I told you about my Jerry. I want you to take a moment, close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing so, or look up into the trees. I want you to think of your Jerry, but your Jerry that's still alive. Who's the Jerry in your life who is still alive, that holds those special pieces, and is an important person to you? Turn to the person next to you and just speak their name. You don't have to go into the full story, but just speak their name out loud to the person next to you.
Salmon burgers to the line.
We're going to give you more challenges throughout the course of this evening. I hope you may still be thinking of that person. I give you a challenge here. and you'll hear this again at the end of the set, go tell that person how much they mean to you. Find a way to speak it to them, whether it's a poem, it's a story, it's a phone call, it's a letter, whatever it means. Let them know how much they mean to you. Because otherwise you'll be writing poems like this that are, imagine when I can tell you, versus here's how I'm going to tell you. All right, we have got one other heck of a show here for y'all. It's going to be filled with a lot of heart, as you can probably tell. And we've got some beautiful storytellers to take us all the way through all the emotional spaces in our hearts. But the first one is going to be Pippin, coming up with a traditional Jewish folktale. Coming up, Pippin! Give him a big round of applause!
Thank you so much, Eric. As many of you know, the Jewish people for centuries have been scattered across the world. And this is a Jewish folktale, versions of which exist from Spain to Lithuania to Ukraine to Afghanistan. This particular version comes from the Jews who lived in what's now Iraq. Once, not too long ago, the vizier of the land summoned the rabbi of our community to the great palace. When the rabbi got there, the vizier peered at him through terrible eyes. I challenge your people to a contest. You must select one from among you who will come and answer 3 questions which I will give in a sign language of my own invention. He must understand exactly what I mean, and then he must answer me correctly in the same sign language that I use. If he is successful, I shall throw a lavish feast for your entire community. But if he fails, he will lose his life. You have 30 days to select someone. If, after 30 days, no one has accepted the challenge, I will have everyone in the Jewish quarter killed. This was terrible news. The rabbi hurried back to the village, and he called an emergency meeting in the synagogue. There he told us of the vizier's evil plan. Is there one among you who will risk his life to save our people? No one moved. We were all petrified with fear. 29 days passed, and still no one came forward. The rabbi called another emergency meeting in the synagogue. There was wailing and moaning as everyone prayed for help. Meanwhile, Yosef the poultry dealer had just returned to the village from a long journey to purchase more chickens. First he went to the marketplace, but nobody was there. Then, as he was passing by the synagogue, he heard all of the wailing. He peeked inside and asked someone, "What's going on?" And he was told of the vizier's plan and that no one would come forward to accept the vizier's challenge. Yosef said, "Oh, is that all? Well, I'll accept the challenge." Everyone said, "You, Yosef? But you're just a poultry dealer. What do you know of sign language?" "Well," Yosef said, "if I don't do it, then everyone will die. At least this way I can save my community, my children, my loved ones." The rabbi came over and thanked Joseph for his courage. "Then it is settled. You shall accept the challenge of the vizier." Finally, the day of the contest arrived, and the entire village gathered on the cobblestones of the town square. To a flourish of music, the vizier came out and and sat on an ornate seat on a platform high above the people. He looked down at the courtyard, and he saw that Yosef was the one who had taken up the challenge. The vizier laughed. Does this lowly poultry dealer really think that he can understand my clever sign language? Yosef, do you understand what you must do? The vizier asked condescendingly. I think so, said Yosef. The vizier continued as if Yosef hadn't said a word. Remember, master of chickens, you must see the signs that I make, understand them perfectly, and then answer me correctly in sign language. I understand, said Yosef. Very well. Let the contest begin. The vizier stood up from his seat, and he held one finger high above his head so that everyone could see it. Immediately, Yosef held up two fingers and pointed them right at the vizier. The vizier's face went white. How had Yosef been able to answer correctly? The first round was much too easy. Are you ready for round two? Then the vizier reached into his pocket and he took out a piece of cheese and he held it up to his nose and made a look of pleasure on his face to let everyone know how delicious it was. Yosef then took an egg out of his pocket and he held it up and showed it to everybody. The vizier was amazed. Yosef had won the second round too. The vizier had no choice but to go on to round three. The vizier reached into another pocket, and he pulled out a handful of grain, and with a broad flourish, he scattered them across the cobblestones of the square. A hush went over the crowd. Yosef thought for a moment. Then he went over to his poultry cart and he took a hen out of one of the coops. He set the hen down on the ground and the hen proceeded to run around the square and eat up every last one of the seeds. The vizier's jaw dropped in astonishment. How had Yosef been able to understand all of these and answer correctly? The vizier said, "This man has matched my every sign. He won the match. Now let us dine on bread and cakes and fish and wine and dates and figs. The treat is mine." The vizier slunk down off the platform. Immediately his friends surrounded him. "What did the signs mean?" The vizier said. "First, I held up one finger to show that there is only one king in the land. Yosef then held up two fingers to let me know that there are two kings, one on earth and one in heaven. I was amazed at his wisdom. Then I took out a piece of cheese and held it up to ask the question, is this cheese from a white goat or a black goat? He then held up an egg to counter with his question, is this egg from a white hen or a brown hen? Again, I marveled at his cleverness. Finally, I scattered grains on the ground. This was meant to taunt him because his people are scattered all across the face of the earth. He then had his hen eat up all the grain to let me know that one day the Messiah would come and gather up his people from wherever they are across the earth. Did you ever think that a lowly poultry dealer could have such wisdom and cleverness?" Meanwhile, we all gathered around Yosef and asked, "What did the signs mean? How did you know how to respond?" Yosef said, "It was easy. First, the vizier pointed one finger at me to let me know that he was going to poke my eye out. So I held up two fingers to let him know that if he did, I would poke out both his eyes. Then, remember, he held up a piece of delicious cheese? This was to show me that he was wealthy and he had enough to eat, but that I am poor and hungry. So I took out an egg to let him know that I have enough food and I didn't need his charity. What about the scattered grains? Asked the rabbi. Joseph responded, I had no idea what that meant, but my hen was hungry, and who am I to let good food go to waste? We all marveled at Joseph's cleverness. Now, why hadn't we thought of that? Thank you.
Thank you, Pippin. Oh my God, I love that. One of my favorite things about this is the underestimated, brilliant being that was Joseph, and how often tales get us to help us really see the rich cleverness that is in all of us. And anytime you're underestimated, think of Joseph. All right, we're bringing up Melissa next, who's going to give us a personal story. Please give me a round of applause as we welcome Melissa to the stage. Woo!
Hello everybody, thank you. So happy to be here and share a story with you. Pick you up, you want to say hi?
Conversation with Turtle about it
Say hi.
tonight.
Who did Odie when Nicholas would die?
Yes, that's Kai. So the story I'm going to share with you today is a personal story and just for a little bit of background context. This is a story about my first experience traveling outside the United States. I was fortunate enough to be able to tour Germany and Europe as a performing slam poet, and this was a great opportunity for me. However, being my first experience traveling outside the country came with a little bit of a learning curve as far as getting around and feeling confident in myself and my independence traveling on my own for some of the time, and then also with just a friend of mine who was in the same position as I was. So, thank you. Here we go. Touring Germany was by far the most independent I had ever been. Everywhere was unfamiliar. My friend Marcus and I would get lost in every city we stayed in, taking long walks every morning before the sun rose. We mapped out our location by sight, eventually finding our way back to our hostel after hours of exploring the cobblestone streets and taking in the flavor of every building, park, and district. I fell in love with Deutschland in the first 40 days I lived there. It was like I was coming home for the first time. And even in the moments I felt lost, I knew that something would catch me and steer me back on course. I sat with my face pressed against the window glass of every seat on the Deutsche Bahn, like a small child filled with excitement as we flew past the Black Forest and the breathtaking castles that lined the Rhine. I'd never seen a castle before, and fairy tales were just stories, but there, they were real. Marcus, my friend, on the other hand, spent his train trips catching up on his sleep. And our travels with him was spent with him snoring across from me as we sped off to our next destination in a new town to discover. Touring Germany was no easy task when neither Marcus nor I spoke a word of German. And the Hauptbahnhof was a maze of chaotic energy, often leaving us sprinting to the right train before it left us behind. And one morning, as we were enjoying a Brezel at the Frankfurt station, we realized that our train to Nuremberg was about to leave, and we frantically jumped on the platform, and Marcus turned to me and spoke like the hero of an action flick. "Run ahead and get on the train! Don't look back! I'll get the bags!" And I obeyed, and I quickly jumped on the train before it sped out of the station only moments later. I immediately began looking for him, but he was nowhere to be found. He had all of our luggage, my ticket, my passport, my wallet. I looked through every car, but he was gone. He hadn't made it on the train in time. And I was on the train with no tickets. And I was gonna be arrested and thrown into foreign jail. Tears started streaming down my face and I began bawling. A train worker hesitantly approached me and asked me what was wrong. And I explained my situation through my tears and my snot. And then he smiled at me warmly. "Oh, don't worry, darling, because you'll find him. Would you like some tea?" And I nodded. And the train worker gave me a comfortable place to sit and a cup of tea to warm my hands. And I immediately felt taken care of as the reality of foreign jail seemed less and less like a possibility. For 20 agonizing minutes, I waited to see what would happen. Would I be alone in Nuremberg? Would Marcus and I ever find each other again? And then a wave of peace washed over me. And I knew I'd be okay. That I'd figure something out. I mean, I had to figure something out.
Of course.
And then suddenly the train worker beckoned me to follow him to the last car. And there was Marcus, sleeping, looking as relaxed as ever. As I sat down across from him, he opened one eye lazily. "Where have you been?" "Nowhere," I replied. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Oh my gosh, there are no better places to get stories than traveling the world. It always takes on such adventurous antics. Now we've got something completely different for you. You've been hearing some solo stories from individuals. We have a play here that we're going to do a play reading for you. Plays are a wonderful, important way to be able to tell stories. So I'll invite Erica and Melissa onto the stage with me. We got a special little play here for you. So take yourself into the imaginative world of the black box that is in your mind, and as we give you the stage directions, let yourself paint the world behind the voices that will read it to you today. So we'll go ahead and kick it off. This is called A Blue Hydrangea by Eric Brayman. Cast of characters. Blue, a blue hydrangea. Pink, a pink hydrangea. Carol, the great gardener. And George, the great gardener's husband. I will play both the gardener and the husband. Scene, a backyard garden. Time, late spring and early summer. Lights up on a garden. A hydrangea bush with multiple heads of blossoms is seen center stage. All of them pink except for one, which is blue. The blossoms are asleep. The sun rises at the start of the play, waking the blossoms from their slumber.
Good morning, world.
Good morning, sun.
Oh, good morning, dirt.
Good morning, butterfly.
Oh, good morning, little ants.
Good morning, lilies, roses, and jasmine.
Well, good morning, cherry tree.
Good morning, Carol. Good morning, family.
Oh, my grove.
What is it?
What happened to you?
What? Is my stamen showing?
No, I can't believe it.
What is it? Am I infected? Is it aphids? Oh, God, get them off, get them off.
Oh, stop fussing, stop flinching.
Out with it. You look like you've seen a slug.
Oh, no, it's not a pest. It's, you're blue.
What?
Blue is the morning sky, dear. You're blue through and through, every petal. I've never seen anything like it. I can hardly believe it's you. Look there, in the bird bath.
Blue leans over and looks at the reflection in water's surface.
Wow.
Did you eat something?
Nothing out of the ordinary, just water from the ground and, carbon from the air. Same water and air as you, I think.
Oh, well, you must have had paint from the house dripped on you.
No, not that I recall.
Well, good gardener in heaven. You must have done something. I've never heard of a hydrangea just turning blue out of the blue.
I mean, there are blue hydrangeas, right?
Well, sure, I've heard of blue hydrangeas, but we are pink hydrangeas. The good Carol planted us as such, and no hydrangea I've ever seen in this backyard has ever been blue.
Are you sure I wasn't always blue and just never looked close enough?
You're being absurd.
Well, I don't know.
You look ridiculous.
I think I look nice.
Nice.
Handsome, even.
Handsome. A hydrangea. Handsome.
Yeah?
Oh, I have never in all of my days heard of a hydrangea being handsome. Beautiful? Of course. Pretty? Always. Stunning, I mean. I've heard it said once or twice. But handsome? Huh, I've never.
You don't have to be so cruel.
I'm sorry, dear. It's just so unnatural.
I think I wished for this.
Wished for this? To be blue? What on earth would make you wish to be blue?
I don't know. I guess I've always wanted to be blue. Like, since I was a tiny bud. There was something in me that never felt pink, you know?
Well, that's against the laws of nature. Carol planted us to match the yellow irises and the red poppies. We are like the splashes of pink in this garden. You know she likes warm colors.
I know. I don't wish to upset Carol, bless her greatness, but I can't help but feel like this is meant to be. I mean, I've had dreams, so many dreams for years about looking up into the sky and seeing my reflection in its beautiful hue. I've had visions while we slumber in the cold of winter, visions of waking up absolutely turquoise and looking down at the time creeping below us to hear the songs of oohs and ahs as each little white bud tells me how much they love the new view. Maybe I manifested this.
Flowers don't manifest. We blossom, wilt, hibernate, repeat. We follow nature's cycle. We only live because her greatness, Carol, planted us here. To manifest would be a malicious betrayal of her great design.
Perhaps her greatness will love this. Perhaps her greatness always wished for me to be blue.
Flowers are not meant to change colors. Flowers are meant to stay the hue the good gardener planted at the time of purchase. You are breaking the laws of lawn care.
I can't help it if I'm blue.
But you wished for this. You wished to break Carol's heart. How dare you?
You think this will break Carol's heart?
Oh, absolutely. There's not a single blue flower in this garden. You'll stick out like a sore thumb. Oh, I can hear the terrible chrysanthemums now. A blue flower. Why, I never. Oh, we will be the laughing stock of the yard. Think compost were in the back. This is why Carol put us back here. She knew we couldn't handle the curbside.
You can't mean that. Carol put us back here because she spends more time here. She put us back here because we're her favorite.
We were her favorite. Imagine when she comes to water us.
She might really like it.
Or maybe she'll chop your head off right off. Into the incinerator with you or all of us. What if she takes all of us? One rotten head in the bunch, soon the whole bunch will turn.
Just because I turn blue doesn't mean every pink hydrangea will turn blue. You clearly don't want to be blue, and you're pink as pink can be.
Because I have my wits about me, because I'm strong. But what about those new buds on the edge, huh? They're so young, impressionable. They will surely turn blue.
It took me 6 years to turn blue, and I never wanted to be pink. Everyone around me was pink, so I just followed suit. I didn't know I had a choice. I think I've been pretending to be pink this whole time.
You take that back.
No, I really think that I was pretending this whole time to be something I'm not. I'm blue. I'm a blue blossom. I'm a handsome blue blossom.
Oh, my steeple. Oh!
Oh, hey, backyard, look over here. Check out the newest edition.
Oh, you shut your mouth right this instant.
They're gonna see eventually. Might as well get it out there. Hey, rhododendron.
Stop it. If I hear one more word out of you, I will break your stem myself.
You wouldn't.
I'll kick you right out of this bush, you hear me?
I'll put you in charge.
I am the oldest of this hedge. I was blossoming long before you were even a thought in Carol's head.
You said we all lived in Carol's great vision before we bloomed.
Of course you did. We all did. That doesn't give you seniority. This is my bush, and so as long as I'm in blossom, you will follow my rules. Now you unruffle your sleeves, so help me.
Or what? You'll chop me out of the family? Leave a gaping hole in this bush? You think Carol will be happy when she comes out to see we're asymmetrical?
Carol, grant me patience.
Oh, sibling, just look at me, please. Look me in the eyes. You see it?
See what?
Look deeper, you must see it. It's me. This has always been me.
Oh, love. I'm so conflicted.
I know it's hard. I know this is different. It's scary for me too.
Oh, stop doing my emotional labor for me.
I just want you to see me and accept me for the blueness that I am. This is me.
I know it's you. It's gonna take me some time to adjust.
Blue and Pink embrace. The sound of the door being opened is heard, and the faint sound of Carol's humming arises in the distance. Good morning, flowers.
Holy Pete Moss, it's her greatness, it's Carol. Oh no, oh no,
Oh, it's Carol.
Oh, she's gonna freak out. She's gonna lose her mind. She's gonna rip us all right out of the ground. She's gonna kill us all.
It's gonna be fine. Everything will be fine.
This is the end. It was great knowing you, world. I wish I had more time. I wish I could watch the butterflies burst from their cocoons even just once more.
We're not gonna die. I don't think.
She'll stop watering us. She'll make us suffer for betraying her.
Here she comes.
Blue and Pink slowly look up to see Carol standing above them. Oh my word! What do we have here?
We're dead.
Why, you've turned blue, little one. I can't believe it. George, get out here. Blue and Pink watch as Carol runs back into the house.
Oh God, it's happening. She's getting George so he can dig us up. I just know it.
She wouldn't.
Oh, I knew it. I knew it was unnatural. I knew she would hate it.
Okay, they're coming back. Calm down. You'll be fine.
May Carol have mercy on our souls.
Blue and Pink's attention follows George and Carol as they come to stand above them. It's turned blue. Look at it. My word, it has. It's so handsome. Like it was always meant to be blue. I love it.
Like I was always meant to be.
The lights fade as Blue basks in their newfound pride. The end. Thank you, friends. A wonderful little hydrangea story there for you. And we are going to go ahead and move straight on into our next one. We're going to bring Erica back up onto the stage as soon as she gets her drink of water, and she's going to be telling us an original folk tale. So go ahead and get those imaginative minds back into your bodies and let yourself be transfixed into some origin stories that are original. Erica.
Hello. So like Eric said, my name is Erica, and I have a long history of storytelling in my family. We're not professional storytellers, but my aunts told me stories, my mother told me stories, the lore in my family. I lived in a small town in South Dakota, and before I was 4, my mom had read me all of the books in the library, and we had to go to the next town to get more books. And so my aunts were older than me. They were like my big sisters. They told me stories, and when they grew up, I was now tasked with telling my cousins their bedtime stories. So when we would stay at my grandma's house, I would tuck my cousins in and we would play a game, and I would ask them for 3 words. And in those using those 3 words, I would create a story. And so that is where this story comes from. My cousin Tracy, I dedicate that to her. She's in Minnesota right now. And it is an origin story about the phases of the moon. And it is called Herman and Hermina. And I'm gonna watch my time here, so okay. So once upon a time, there were 2 friends by the name of Herman and Hermina. Herman was a scientist, but he was one of those scientists who looked out at the stars and wondered what is beyond, what is on the other side. He had a best friend, and her name was Hermina. Now, Hermina was the sort who loved her 2 feet planted on the ground. She liked to-do lists, she went to work, she had her routine. So these two really were like yin and yang. One day, Herman called Hermina over and said, "Hermina, I have something to show you." And he entered into a secret door. Hermina followed behind, and they went down some steps, down and around to Herman's secret laboratory. Now, in this laboratory, way in the corner, was a big something covered under a sheet. Herman said, "I know we don't keep secrets from each other, we're best friends, but I've been keeping a secret from you. And that is, I've built a rocket to go to the moon." Now, Hermina was shocked about this because they really have been best friends. And so, Herman also said to her, "I've already been to the moon. I went up and back, and it works. And I want you to come and see what I have seen." Now, Hermina isn't a person who just drops everything to go somewhere, especially when you've been invited to the moon. So she was really torn. But she'd never been to the moon, and how often do you get a chance to go to the moon? So she thought for just a moment, and she said, "Well, you know, here we go, carpe diem, let's do this." So Herman takes the sheet, he lifts it up, and woohoo! It's this beautiful space rocket that looks a little janky because on the side it just says Herman's Space Rocket, and it's painted in Herman's handwriting. And he says, "But don't worry, I've made it to the moon, I've made it back, we're gonna be just fine." So they take some time, I don't know how long, this is the secret sauce in going to the moon within Herman's mind, to get ready for their space travels. And they hop in the rocket and they head up to the moon. And eventually they land on the moon, and as they get out, they're playing with the gravity, and Hermina is looking out at space, and she is so happy she has come on this trip. And so as she's looking around and exploring and going into moon craters, she sees in the distance something coming toward her, and it's rolling toward her. And so she starts freaking out a little bit, and Herman said, don't worry, there's something else I didn't tell you. I've made some friends here on the moon, and they have been waiting for you. I told them you were gonna come. I was just banking on it. And so closer and closer, there's these little creatures, and they look like snowmen, but they're made out of like moon rock. And they've got a big eye in the center, and they've got 2 little, antenna, and they come forward, and they're like, "Hi, Hermina, we are so glad you're here. Welcome. Herman, you are just in time for the bowling league. We are gonna be late." Herman says to Hermina, "Well, there's one more thing I forgot to tell you. When I was here last, I joined a bowling league. And you know how I love to bowl, and they needed somebody, and I was here. And so, when I said we had to leave like yesterday, we had to leave yesterday because I had to get to league." And so Hermina's like, "Well, here I am. I might as well just go along." So they go to the bowling league. They do their moon bowling. If you've never bowled on the moon, it is fantastic. So if you get a chance, I highly recommend it. So they spend a week here on the moon with these little moon creatures and moon caverns and moon houses and drinking moon juice. And eventually Hermina says, "Herman, this has been lovely. I mean, it's so beautiful, it's so gorgeous. Your new friends are wonderful, but I miss home. I have 2 cats at home. I miss them. Moon cats are really not quite as cuddly, and so I'd like to go home now." And Herman says, "Okay, I promise, this is the last time. There's one more thing I didn't tell you. I'm moving to the moon. And so I'm gonna ask you, if you want to leave, I understand. I'm gonna ask you to head back home. It's really easy to operate the moon rocket. You just hit the red button. It's gonna take you right down into the laboratory. You'll be fine. There's a user's manual, so you can figure it out. I know it, you're smart." So Hermina takes a big breath and she thinks, "Oh my gosh, can I leave my best friend on the moon? I don't know." And she's also like, "But can I leave my cats for the rest of eternity? I don't know." And again, Hermina is torn. And then she thinks, you know what, this is his choice. This is his life. Like, I came to the moon, that's fine, but I am not taking your load. So she says, fine, I will go back, but I'm gonna come back and check on you in 6 months, okay? And Herman says, that sounds great, that's fine. Just remember to put rocket fuel in the rocket before you head on up, because we've just got enough to bring us back home. So Hermione hops in the space rocket. She waves goodbye to the space people. The space people's little antennas go off, and she hits the red button and heads back down to Earth, and like Herman said, landed right down in the laboratory, easy as pie. So a few days go by, Hermione's with the cat, she's gone back to work, and she looks up at the sky. So I need to tell you this. So before this took place, this is an old story, before this took place, the moon had always been a bright, full light. So now Hermione is back on Earth, and she looks up in the sky, and she sees that the moon is no longer full. It now is like a 3/4 full. And so she gets a little worried, but she thought, you know, maybe it's a cloud, I don't know. And so she goes about her business, she pets her cat, she does the whole thing, and she looks back up a few days later, and now the moon is a half of a moon. Half light, half dark. So she starts getting worried, but she thinks, you know what? Herman is totally a capable individual. I mean, he built a space rocket, for God's sake. So, like, it'll be fine, right? Like, it's fine, it's fine. And so she goes about her business, she continues to pet her cats, and she looks up a few days later, and now it is just a crescent. So at this point, she's very concerned. So she says, all right, I know I just got back to Earth, but I cannot leave my best friend up in the moon who knows what is happening up there. So she goes back to Herman's house, she looks for the space fuel, she finds it, she fuels up, she presses the red button, the laboratory ceiling opens up, and she heads back into space, lands on the moon, and there's Herman. Do you know where Herman was? Herman was sitting in a moon crater. He was crying. He was so sad. He looked very, very miserable. And Herman looks up at her and he says, Hermione, I missed you so much. My new friends are really fine. And I also had a really bad bowling score last night. Like, I couldn't get anything. And so I just was feeling really sorry for myself. And so Hermione says, oh, Herman, I came all the way up to the moon for this? And so Herman says, it's not just today. I have missed you dearly. We have never been apart this long. And Hermione thinks for a moment and she says, listen, friend, I'm going to stay with you for a while. But then I'm going to have to go back. I'm going to go back in 2 weeks. So while Herman and Hermione are up on the moon, Hermione did tell her mom this time that she was leaving. Last time she didn't. She told her mom about what she was doing, and her mom looks up at the sky, and at this point, when Hermione left, there was no moon, there was no light. And so the mom looks up a few days later, and there is just a sliver of light. A few days later, there's a half of a moon, and a few days after that, it's 3/4 of a moon. And 2 weeks later, it is a full and beautiful moon. And this is when Hermione departs. Hermione says, see you later, Herman. See you later, moon people. I do have to tell you, this is very cute because Hermione also was like, okay, so I'm going to move to the moon for 2 weeks a year. What am I going to do? Or 2 weeks a month? And so the moon people and Hermione developed a business. They might be coming to the Oregon Country Fair next year because she's selling moon rocks. I mean, she's going up to the moon, so why not? So if you see Hermione in a booth, you can say hello from me. And so anyway, Hermione takes a couple of moon rocks. She hops in the rocket, heads back home, and Hermione and Herman, as far as I know, are continuing this cycle, which is how we get the phases of the moon. Thank you very much. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Erica. Everybody has that friend that just goes to the moon, and once they get there, they're like, oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you infinite important details. So thank you for those friends, and thank you for those friends who come back when they know that you're in trouble. Thank you, Erica, for being one of those friends who always comes back. Actually, Erica came and was my savior when my moon was turning into a crescent, and I was very sick with a sore throat. She brought me cough drops. So thank you for being my Hermione. We are at the end of our set. Thank you so much for those who came. If you were here at the beginning, you heard me talk about my Jerry. I'm going to close off with telling you about my Rita, my grandma Rita. Now, Jerry is somebody who I didn't get to tell him how important he was to me while he was here with us on this earth. My grandmother Rita is somebody who's still with us, and I have been able to tell her how much she means to me. And I wrote her this poem based on just the incredible legacy that she is. It's called How Fitting She's a Thistle. This woman, seated in a pristine living room of creams and teals, rocking slowly, tiptoeing through memory and remembrance, even those she wishes to forget. I watch spines grow from her callous leaves as stories she would never call trauma flow from thin pink lips into the muscles of my heart. Holding gently to her stem, I wish for thicker skin, like the kind she has grown to shift from sadness to laughter and song. Just a wee duck and Doris, just a wee and that's all. Just a wee duck and Doris, afore you gang awa. I watch her petals, bright violets against sage and sand, burst forth from her glistening eyes as we stumble over tongue twister and language foreign in our American mouths, yet we try. If you can say it's a bobnick moonlicknick, then you're alright, you can. I suddenly understand why such a rough flower could be the symbol of our ancestral homeland. Of course she is a thistle. This resilient woman with warrior in her bloodstream, I see generations in the laugh lines that double as aqueducts for tears. She is a flower, never intended for plucking or picking, but growing wild in tough rock and dry air, never letting a lack of comfort keep her from her summer bloom. She is a thistle, and I am her seed, floating in the wind, waiting for a wee button Ben to fill with flowers. So that is a poem that I wrote for my grandma Rita. She is somebody who's very special and important to me. I gave you a directive at the beginning of this to please think of somebody who is important in your life that you haven't been able to fully appreciate and tell the stories of impact to. Go and tell those people that. But something else I want to give you a directive of is my grandpa Jerry, grandfather figure Jerry, when he died, we told the stories exactly as he would want us to tell his stories, completely unfiltered. My grandma, I told the story of her exactly as she would wish the story to be told, of her resilience and her kindness. What I give you a directive to do is go away, live the life that inspires people to tell the stories you wish them to tell of you. That is an ever-going process from now until the day that you depart this wonderful planet that we get to share together. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to Spoken Word Camp for letting us be and take over the stage every day at 1:30. Yes, thank you, thank you. We will be back again tomorrow at 1:30. We will have another set of storytellers. Gypsy will be joining us tomorrow. Some of the familiar faces will be back as well, but every story will be completely brand new. So spread the word and hope to see you. Thanks, y'all.